Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Scrambled Jake's Breakfast Company. You already know these folks are the best breakfast place in town. It says it right there, Breakfast Company. But did you know they're a go-to spot for lunch, brunch, and afternoon meetings as well? Look, so many people wind up at the national brands where they go and sit around and have their afternoon meetings. Do it at the local spot, the local meeting place. Scrambled Jake's out in West Knoxville, great place. You can also ask them about renting their warm and welcoming space for your next big event. Scrambled Jake's, check them out this week. ScrambledJakes.com to learn more. All right, let me welcome in the last two members of today's panel. We have right here former Vol football player Will Overstreet, former NFL football player as well. Thanks for being here. And next to you from The Athletic, we got David Ubben. All right. And David, if we go to the Wipey board right now, and you'll see Chuck standing over there as Vanna White. And we've got so many names printed over there, we're just going to see from the neck up, basically, for this segment. But back to us White here. What we did, or what I did, was I took about 4 different online depth charts by different beat writers, David being one of them. And then I and no one's depth chart looks the same. I took my own thoughts and we kind of meshed them together into the Sports Source depth chart over here. I listed it in such a way where the red names are true freshmen. The blue names are guys who aren't going to take part in spring practice this year due to rehab, injuries, that kind of thing. But there are guys like Cade Mays you could put at 5 different offensive line positions. In an effort to get more names on the board, I put people in one position and one position only, and then we can debate from there. But I really want to talk about the starters as I project them for the fall and see if you guys agree, disagree. So let's take a look at the Wipey board over there. We're going to talk about the front 7 on the defense in this segment. You see the defensive ends at the top there. I've got Darrell Middleton, who's facing some legal issues. My guess is he's not going to be suspended for long, if suspended at all. Darrell Middleton, Emmett Gooden back from injury, and then Aubrey Solomon. I anticipate those 3 being your starters. Will and Josh, looking at that list, do you agree, disagree? Is there anything that stands out about the position?
I would have a few questions just because Gooden coming back from an ACL, Emerson played most of the year last year. You never would say, hey, this guy that just played all these games is now going to be the second string guy. So I would say that's going to be an area where you're going to look at during the spring. There's a strong competition, and there's going to be a competition when you get into two-a-days and the beginning of the year, because that's just one of those things you have to look at. Did this guy get better and improve? And you write in the other guy earned the starting job before he got hurt last year. But that was last year. Yeah. This guy's now got a lot more experience. The other areas, if you look at it, Solomon and Butler there. Butler in this case, you looked at the production numbers. His production numbers got stronger at the end of the year. Solomon stayed consistent, but you did see a little bit of a drop-off. So I'm also wondering there, do you see kind of that battle of who's going to be the guy taking the first snaps? Now, what you have to remember about both of those guys, the number 2 is probably going to get equal number of snaps. All they're really doing is playing for who gets the first snap on the first play of the game and technically gets called the starter. But you're going to see those guys get equal snaps, especially if you start seeing their production numbers stay fairly nearly the same. It's a good situation to be in.
Josh?
Yeah, isn't that what you look for with Tennessee's defensive line heading into this past season? And I think you hope to carry that over, is that you have a big rotation of players, and that's where having Emmett Gooden come back helps. It's not about, to me, which guy's out there first. It's about how it's split up as the games go along, and then development. Latrell Bumpus, does he continue to get better? Butler, where is Gooden physically coming back? All of that's going to matter.
Well, and that's one of the things we talked about last year. It was kind of the surprise of the season was by the end of the year, you look back and you said, each of these, you didn't have any heroes out here, but all these guys popped at one time or another, which is not what it certainly wasn't the September thoughts on the defensive line. Jimmy and David, let's take a look at the linebackers here. Now, here's the way I've got it. I've got Bennett and DeAndre Johnson on the outside, To'o on the inside, of course, and I've got Quavaris Crouch, and he's going to miss spring practice with rehab. I've got him taking an inside linebacker spot in the fall. David and Jimmy, agreements, disagreements, thoughts on the linebacker core?
I'm with you on Crouch. I think he's a really good player. He's a very good athlete, and I think that's probably the best position for him. The one thing I don't know about Crouch in terms of him handling the outside, how good is he as a pass rusher? How good is he in pass coverage? I don't know those 2 things about him, but I've seen him play. He's a very physical player. The one other question you might have is J.J. Peterson emerged to the point where you think he is one of your better linebackers? Right. And if he has, do you keep him there for depth at the inside, or do you move Crouch outside?
Yeah, I think, looking at the outside spot as well, I think you might lean a little young. I think DeAndre Johnson has more experience than those guys, but you got a guy like Tyler Barron who might be too good to keep off the field. I think he comes in a little bit slower. He's not going to be there till the summer, obviously, but I think he's a guy who could really make an impact early on. And then Roman Harrison was a guy that a lot of people thought would have a bigger year in 2019, but another year in the system. I think he's a guy that could make a big impact. They're going to have a lot of bodies outside. Who do they rely on? Who emerges? I think Kevon Bennett really has a chance to have a breakthrough season, become a new star for this team. But that linebacker spot is interesting. And you mentioned inside linebacker as well. There's no good answer there. Another interesting answer, Jabril Cox, transfer from North Dakota State. We wrote about him at The Athletic this week. A guy that, it wants to move up from the FCS level, getting a lot of calls from everybody, and it looks like it's, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee in the mix. I think he wants to come down south, and that's going to be a really interesting name to keep an eye on as well.
John, you talk about players that pop. Bennett popped as a pass rusher, and so did Roman Harrison, and so did Johnson at times. So those look to be the pass rushing kind of guys, which is where you would likely have them at outside linebacker.
Well, and one of the reasons, Bennett, with his father being a very successful player, you would think that unlike some of these other guys, no knock on them, they didn't have a daddy who was an NFL pass rusher who's been teaching him some moves since the time he was playing Pee Wee football. The other thing that made Bennett stand out to me was Overstreet paid attention to him immediately. You saw good things from him. Let's end up this segment, the front seven. Let's go back to the wide shot, and we get Chuck over there. All right, I'm going to give you, if Jeremy Pruitt had a magic wand and could make any one of his front seven players guaranteed all SEC this year, who's the most important guy? Who's the guy they need to play at an all-SEC level? Chuck?
Well, I think you would start that with the obvious selection is Toto, because of what you're trying to replace with Daniel Batuli. Remember how many problems they had getting lined up in the right place. Somebody's going to have to take on that role. I think the guy you're looking at right here is Bennett. I think we've kind of pegged him as a star in the making. Can he achieve that? If he does, then Jeremy Pruitt would be tickled.
Okay, very good. All right, when we come back, we're going to take a look at the bottom part of that list. That's the secondary. Then we're going to go through the offense. We've got a lot more to come here in the Sports Source. Come on back as we do our spring practice preview.